Well, good morning. Thank you for joining me here today. It's been a busy week in Michigan, and with all that's going on, we wanted to take a moment this morning to highlight the fact that beginning tomorrow, Saturday, October 28th, voters in many communities will have the opportunity to vote early for the first time in local and municipal elections throughout our state. Now, many of you already know, last year, Michiganders voted overwhelmingly to amend our state constitution to mandate at least 9 days of early voting in all future statewide elections in our state. The amendments passed with wide margins of support from voters on both sides of the aisle living all across the state. The early voting mandate kicks in next year with our presidential primary. But recognizing the importance of implementing this new option to vote in our state in a way that is smooth, secure, and accessible to all, I'm here today to formally announce that several communities holding local elections this fall have voluntarily decided to offer 9 days of early voting in advance of this fall's November 2023 election. In total, 12 counties around the state and 12 counties and municipalities around the state will run early voting sites beginning tomorrow, Saturday, October 28th, and will offer 9 full days of early voting at those sites. Under the law, early voting can be conducted one of 3 ways: through the county, through the municipality, or through multiple municipalities working together and hosting sites as a team. Oakland County, for example, will be hosting county-run sites for all jurisdictions that have elections within the county, except for the city of Rochester, which is hosting its own early voting locations. In addition, 10 cities and townships around the state, including Lansing and Westland, will similarly host sites within their own municipality. And third, in Eaton County, Delton Township and Windsor Township are partnering to test multi-municipal early voting sites at a site run by Delta Township. A full list of participating jurisdictions, along with the hours and locations within each jurisdiction, is available at michigan.gov/early voting. Now, with early voting, voters in communities participating in this year's pilot can come to a designated location that will operate just like what you'd experience on Election Day. A voter comes in, gets their ballot, marks their ballot, and enters it into the tabulator. But more importantly, no ballots will be counted before Election Day. I want to take a moment also to thank Senators Jeremy Moss and Representative Penelope Cerniglu, who worked for months with clerks across the state to enact legislation that would ensure clerks had the funding and flexibility they need to successfully implement the early voting option for all voters. Through that legislative process, it became clear that the local elections taking place in several Michigan jurisdictions this year would provide a valuable opportunity for us to pilot the new technologies and procedures for early voting that the Bureau of Elections has developed over the last year. I'm grateful to the many clerks who volunteered to be part of this year's pilot, which will include, among other things, the testing and assessing of the technology and early voting procedures, evaluating any additional needs for resources and funding in advance of 2024, and helping to educate the public about what to expect from early voting next year when it's implemented fully and statewide. I'm looking forward to seeing what we learn during this fall's pilot and ask for your help in amplifying this opportunity to vote early and this option for voters who live in participating communities this fall. The more voters know about this opportunity, the more we can see them participating, and the better we will be at assessing the success of the pilot and preparing for next year. Thank you again for joining us today for this announcement. I'll also be visiting several early voting locations personally over the next 9 days. Sherry will let you know about any of those visits that will be open to the media to join, and with that, I'm happy to take a few questions. Yes.
So what financial resources is the state providing to these communities, and how does that differ for communities that work together versus those that do it on their own?
We actually have a funding formula that our Bureau of Elections has developed based on which of the options the jurisdictions choose. And that funding, we can get you the specific numbers on who gets what in that funding formula, but it is determined by the number of voters and the needs and the local funding opportunities as well for that particular jurisdiction, county, or multiple municipalities. Yeah.
A few questions here. Do you have enough funding? Do you have enough poll workers? And any challenges prepping workers and clerks for this new system?
No challenges as of yet, although it's new. And so there are a lot of folks who are a little excited about the newness of it all and anticipating a lot of new challenges. And so part of this week will be an opportunity to walk them through that process so that next year, in the February presidential primary or in August and November, a lot of that nervousness perhaps that would precede any new addition like this to the elections will have diminished through the experience they've already had. We haven't had challenges identifying election workers, in part because these are municipal elections. They're not of the high turnout rates that we're going to see next year. So most folks have already got the capacity and the funding, frankly, that they need. What it's really going to help us anticipate is what additional tools and resources we're going to need based on the mathematics that are applied this fall for next year. And there was one earlier question, just
enough funding. Do you feel like you have enough funding for this election and then to implement it statewide?
We have enough funding for this election. You know, the legislature allocated $30 million for early voting that kicks in next year. The fiscal year ends in September, and there's another one that begins in October of next year. So we are going to use a lot of next year if we don't have enough funding to seek supplemental or additional sources, as well as go through the budgetary process for next year. So all that to say is I feel confident that we have sufficient funding, and I feel confident that we also have pathways to pursue if for some reason data suggests through this pilot or otherwise that we need more funding, and we'll pursue those resources next year. Go ahead.
How do you think this will impact voter turnout?
We'll see. I mean, that's one of the things we'll test. One of the biggest things is making sure voters know about their option to vote early. That will probably have the biggest impact in 2020, which is our model for implementing new options to vote like this. When we implemented no reason absentee, we found that notifying voters about not just the fact that they could vote from home, but how to do it was key in having, at that point in November, 70% of voters take advantage of that new option, and seeing alongside that the highest turnout election in our state's history. So we've had, as we've expanded voting options in our state, we have a pattern of seeing higher turnout. In this election, it's hard to say as well because there are contested races and uncontested races. There are challenging things for people to weigh in on and others that are less controversial. So I think that'll also have an impact of people turning out to vote. But we'll see. We'll see what the numbers look like and collect that data, and that'll help inform our work for next year.
How did the Department of State essentially work out the nitty gritty of how the system works? Who did you consult with? Did you maybe look to any other states that have this already?
Yeah, we benefit from the fact that a number of states have already implemented early voting, in many cases with more time and days than here in Michigan. We also benefit from the fact that we have lawmakers and clerks who have been working together nonstop since the beginning of this year, both to develop legislation and also explore with stakeholders additional administrative needs that we've developed and identified throughout the year. So I feel optimistic that the collaboration that we've engaged in with so many stakeholders, clerks, and lawmakers over the last 8 or 9 months has prepared us for this fall. And again, it's new, and so there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainties that we're going to see play out and work through in the week ahead. But that's why we're doing this pilot, so that we identify them now and bring in additional best practices that perhaps can inform our work from other states and in our preparation for the next statewide election in February.
Can you talk about the efforts to keep ballots and tabulated votes secure over the 9 or however many days?
Yeah, our clerks have done a great job of developing protocols, especially as it's come under greater scrutiny in the last several years. One of the reasons why we've offered these 3 options, you can work within your own municipality, within multiple municipalities, or within the county, is to give clerks the opportunity to also identify the resources they're going to need to secure the ballots, to have enough people, and to secure the machines. And as we've worked with municipalities through the Bureau of Elections, we've identified different ways, because it's going to be different for an Upper Peninsula jurisdiction, or even West Michigan, East Grand Rapids, and Westland versus Oakland County. But that said, the partnerships are in line with what we need to secure the materials, and that's something that we're also, again, given the challenges that we've experienced in 2020, are particularly mindful of this cycle. Not all communities have elections this fall, and so we started there, and we simply just offered the option. And so those who wanted to take the opportunity, and we particularly wanted to be able to test all 3 iterations of early voting, the municipality, the multiple municipality, and the county-led operation. So we were fortunate enough to have volunteers from all 3 examples, and but it was open to anyone who had an election this fall as an option. So thank you again for being here today. And I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Thanks.